mascot that would be.
Yes.
All right, joining us right now in our sphere of handsome, the one and the only. I like watching his little TV stuff too. Yeah. He does. I want his box on the screen to be the biggest, and then the other guys to be. No offense to them.
No, but it's about Dave.
I'm watching Dave Richards.
Absolutely,
and he joins us each and every Friday to get us ready to go for fantasy football. Good morning, David.
What's up, gentlemen? How are you? I thought you were going a little bit longer on that intro.
No, I've realized, Dave,
comparing me to a sphere. Hold on. If you're comparing me to a sphere, I don't know if I'm happy with that.
No, not you. By the way, first off, seriously for a second, how are you? How is it out there? I think that last we saw the hurricane, I think was in Nashville. I believe you're south of it, but I'm just always when that happens, I want to make sure everything you and yours are okay.
You know what's nice is every time there's a hurricane, you mention it and you always check in on me, and I so appreciate that. I really do. That's not sarcasm.
Honestly, it's scary, man.
Dude, if you look at the cone. And I don't know if you guys are aware of what a cone is, but, like the track of where the eye of the storm might go.
Yeah.
It covered like 94% of the state of Florida. The only part it didn't cover is southeastern Florida, and that's where I live. So it was kind of breezy. It rains here every day, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But, no, we're very fortunate. But I'm thinking about all my friends and everybody else that's in that area, including all of our friends that are in Tallahassee, Dave.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, they've seen everything out there in Tally and now all over the place out there. So our thoughts with them. Last night, Malik Neighbors is looking to be a phenomenal rookie despite the concussion. CeeDee Lamb started out gangbusters, but here we are. And what are they going to do with that? What from a fantasy standpoint, what are we going to do with Dallas's backfield? Is there potential value anywhere, or is that just screw it? They suck.
I mean, it's a mess right now. Yeah. So they're using Hunter Lepke as their third down running back, and he's a fullback, and no one's going to trust him. It's like trusting Kyle Juszczyk on your fantasy team because Juszczyk has played some third downs for San Francisco lately. Dowdle's their best running back, but they're only giving him about 45% of the snaps. Last night was a season high 11 carries for him. You look for more than that from a fantasy running back. I would view Dowdle for now as a great bench running back and someone that the Cowboys can hopefully give more work to, and as he grows and develops and has a good rushing average and what have you. But we said this about him last year, and it was a different group of running backs in Dallas last year, and they never really came through on it. So we'll see if they do it this year. But Zeke is droppable. They've got Dalvin Cook on their team. He's on their practice squad. I wonder if they make a move to him
for real
at some point. Maybe ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, which sounds like blasphemy in Dallas, but it could be the direction that they move forward in. But for now, like I said, Dowdle, good to have on your bench. You'll use him as bye weeks happen. Bye weeks start next week in fantasy. That's what his value is right now. It's very low.
Dave, last week, speaking of trying to trust people, I mean, I doubt people played him just because, and maybe they did because of the certain situation going on in San Francisco, but Juwan Jennings has the game of his life. And now I'm sure people, if they don't have him, are scrambling to pick him up. What do you trust on him and what his fantasy future might be?
So Dave can definitely attest to the history of players in the National Football League who have a blow-up game one week and then are Dudsville.
The Sammy Watkins Memorial player. Yes.
Yes, there you go. Okay, so he might be that guy.
Yeah.
Debo was back at practice for the 49ers on Thursday. That hurts Juwan Jennings. George Kittle was back at practice on Wednesday and Thursday. That would hurt Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings' target share when those guys play, it's really, really low. And of course it is because he's their number 3 receiver, and they like to use a lot of 2 running back formations, 2 tight end formations. So he's not a full-time player. If Debo's healthy and if Kittle's healthy, Juwan Jennings might be good for like 6 fantasy points in the PPR league.
Yeah.
If one of those guys is out, then I'd be more interested in Jennings because he could get to 10, maybe 11 or 12 PPR points. But the game of his life last week, some people did start him, Jason. Some people used him out of desperation or out of just, it seems like a good matchup and a good opportunity. So go ahead and put him out there. But man, it's going to be really hard to buy into Juwan Jennings being a fantasy staple and a must-start type of player moving forward.
Dave, speaking of the 49ers, fantasy football, as you know, is all about opportunity. And with the news swirling, and who knows what to believe about Christian McCaffrey, are you of the mind, if you're a fantasy football owner that does not have Christian McCaffrey, are you poking around with a lowish offer? Maybe somebody who, odds are, if you drafted Christian McCaffrey, it was top 2. You've been kicked right in the you-know-whats, and you can't let your season go to waste. If you've got depth, are you trying to maybe pick him up for the stretch run in the championship right now?
Yes, and I'm going to continue to try and do that as the weeks go by, because the manager that took Christian McCaffrey, and honestly, Dave, he was the consensus 101. Yep. If they only have 1 win or worse, 0 wins, they're desperate to try and get on the board, and they'll eventually relent and give away Christian McCaffrey at a value that even they won't believe. But that's what you have to do. You can't overpay for Christian McCaffrey. And I've seen some trades go by. Someone gave up James Conner and Garrett Wilson to get Christian McCaffrey. That's a lot to pay.
That is.
Christian
Wow.
McCaffrey. You almost need to give up somebody who's playing, but maybe is underperforming, or maybe they've had like 1 great game and 2 kind of bad games. Devontae Adams comes to mind.
What about Alvin Kamara?
Someone give away for Christian McCaffrey, and that's if your team is really deep. But yeah, I've got some teams that are 3-0. I'm starting to think already about, all right, let's build this roster out so that I can make a playoff run. Having Christian McCaffrey on the bench seems like a really good idea. Here's the flip side, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer. We just don't know when he'll come back. It's not like the 49ers are saying, oh, yeah, sure, don't worry about it. He'll be back in a couple of weeks and he'll be as good as new. There could be more complications along the way. And what if, and this is just a bad what if, but what if you trade for Christian McCaffrey, even if you give up Devontae Adams solo, maybe even somebody worse than Devontae Adams? What if you do that and he never comes back? He doesn't even play this year. I hate to even think of it, but if that does happen, it could really hurt, obviously would hurt your fantasy team. So you don't want to pay too much for him. And the problem is the people who have Christian McCaffrey, they're still looking for first round value in trade. So he's getting traded a lot in CBS leagues, but not as much as you'd think because of the whole tug of war going on over his fantasy value.
2 quick follow-ups. 1, is Alvin Kamara too much? Number 2, does that strategy change? Do you up the value a little bit if you're in a keeper league?
Number 1, yes, it's way too much to give up Alvin Kamara for Christian McCaffrey. And number 2, Dave, how much longer do you expect Christian McCaffrey to be
you're right.
like himself? He's already 28 years old.
You're right.
People are going to have trust issues with him next year. Think about fantasy drafts next year. Even if he finishes this year strong, they're going to say, well, he's 29 and he had another year where lower body injuries held him back. And people are going to start to move away from Christian McCaffrey. They already are, to be honest with you.
Dave, you talked about underperforming. We're 3 weeks in, getting ready to start week 4 last night with those games. But with that game, are there some players that have underperformed right now that you actually are worried about?
I'm a little worried about DJ Moore, who's had some good games, but not any big breakout games for the Bears. And now Rome Odunze had his breakout game in week 3, and Keenan Allen might be back this week. So that's somebody that I can't help but worry about. He was a top 50 pick, and now here he is, maybe has a chance to not even get that value back. Looking at running backs, are there players that have underwhelmed? Yeah, Josh Jacobs has underwhelmed. He hasn't scored yet this year. He had 3 targets in week 1 with Jordan Love. I think he's had 1 catch since, and we've seen the other running back in Green Bay play a little bit better than he has through the first 3 weeks of the season. That running back would be Emmanuel Wilson. So I'm a little bit nervous about him. And then there's other running backs like Javonte Williams in Denver. I'm kind of ready to get him off my team. DeAndre Swift, same thing, kind of ready to just move on from him. And then another running back that I'm not quite ready to move on from, but was drafted in the mid-rounds, is Chase Brown in Cincinnati. I still think he's their most explosive back. And I'm kind of waiting for them to give him a little bit more run. But it might not happen anytime soon because Zach Moss has looked good. He looked good last week. I expect him to look good this week against Carolina, but maybe in those games after, against Baltimore, for example, maybe that's when they start to make a change after Zach Moss has a bad game, or if Zach Moss gets hurt. One other guy drafted relatively early was Zamir White in Las Vegas. that whole run game, that offensive line, it's kind of crushed that team in general. I don't know if Zamir White's got a place on fantasy rosters anymore.
Last thing for you, because I don't have the access to the numbers that you do, I'm sure, and the all the hullabaloo and malarkey going on right now. But I gotta think,
hey, it's not hullabaloo and malarkey. It's called data. it's nerdy data.
Take that for data. So you got, I'm sure, a lot of people wondering what the hell, if anything, Kareem Hunt's value is this weekend. It's said that he's going to get mixed in to the mix in Kansas City. I understand they're going against the Chargers, but for you, like, I'll give you a quick example, Dave, and I'll cheat here for a second. I'm sitting on either Tyson Chandler or Kareem Hunt. So where do you put his value this weekend? What do you do there?
I would, if I had to start one of them, it would be Ty Chandler ahead of Kareem Hunt. And they both carry value in fantasy, because what happens if Aaron Jones goes down? Well, Ty Chandler's a stud running for the Vikings, and that offense looks like it's not going to miss a beat. Kareem Hunt might overtake Carson Steele in a week or two. And I know Carson Steele is fun. I wrote about this on CBSSports.com. If you want something a little bit more in depth, I'll tweet out a link to it as soon as we're done talking here. But I think Kareem Hunt could end up being a factor for Kansas City, because when you watch Carson Steele play, yes, he's physical and he's strong, he's tough. He is like a straight ahead runner, and he doesn't have a lot of wiggle to him. He's not good in pass protection, not experienced enough in that role or catching the football. Kareem Hunt is, and Kareem Hunt is trusted by Patrick Mahomes. They are pals. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Kareem Hunt start to make some inroads as soon as this week against the Chargers on Carson Steele's role. And then maybe as soon as next week, Dave, we're sitting here talking about how Kareem Hunt, after the bye in week 6 for Kansas City, is going to be a starter for fantasy managers. So if he's still out there in your league, you want to stash him too.
Well, there you go. Straight from, well, he's not a horse, but
wow.
It's straight from the horse's mouth, and I stopped because he's not a horse. Straight from the smart person.
How do you know I'm not a horse?
Well, you know what? That's a great point. We've never met in person. You know my friends in Vegas. You've been on elevators with them before, but you don't. Well, that sounds really weird out of context.
Yeah.
Where can people see, hear, and follow you, David?
While you were in your jammies this morning, Dave, we were recording our Fantasy Football Today podcast. Of course, you can download that on any podcast platform, but we're also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. Like and subscribe to that. And today at, it's 1 o'clock Eastern, so that's 10 a.m. your time. I'll be on CBS Sports Network with another live episode of Fantasy Football Today, going through all the starts and sits for week number 4, some player props to help you get rich, and just having some fun. That's at 10 a.m. your time on CBS Sports Network. Check your local listing.
Get rich with Dave Richard. Look at that. Trademark it, whole thing. Yeah. And I appreciate you, as always, coming on right when our show ends, because, it helps. I don't want to lose my whole audience to CBS Sports Network. I appreciate you. Thank you, David. Talk to you next week. We'll take a break. Anybody got a salt liquor or sugar cube?
In fact, I do.
When we come back, Three for Madness. Caitlin Clark, she's gone. Golf. Yeah, that's right. There's golf going on.